Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. I hope you're all having a great day. Today your favorite side dish is back in 2024 to bring you some more quality lolcow content. Now of course you know today is definitely going to be about DSP, however if there are other lolcows that you'd like to see me cover or any other people in general, please feel free to leave a comment below and let me know some people you'd like to see on the channel. Now per the title of this video, we are going to be covering the absolute state of DSP in 2024. Now you might be asking yourself, what all does that entail? Are we talking about current Phil from this last year, or what is it that this is going to encompass? Essentially, the goal of this video is to just kind of take stock of the last year of Phil and all of the most recent blunders he's done up to this point. There's been a lot that's happened even just in the last couple weeks, but this whole last year for Phil was really just a big nosedive. So I kind of want to go ahead and just cover the overall general state of Phil. I suppose in some ways you could also probably consider this video somewhat of a recap of 2023 for DSP, because let's be honest, 2023 was not kind to our man Phil. In fact, 2023 kicked off the I Wanna Be Interviewed saga, and of course this was prompted by Moist Critical making a video on DSP, basically calling him out for the typical things he does, begging online, calling out his fans for no legitimate reason, and overall just being a toxic individual. 2023 was also the year that Phil must have realized how to turn off whatever filter was covering his absolutely terrible camera quality, because he did get rid of that awful piss stain looking filter that was covering his camera. Outside of major improvements to the stream, that's about the only notable one that I can really say, because overall it just has more natural color. To say that Phil actually puts in any effort is kind of a bit of a stretch. But going back to the interview saga, Phil did want to be interviewed very badly, so much so that he reached out to Stuttering Craig of the Side Scrollers podcast and ended up doing a 5-hour interview with him. Now, much to the chagrin of DSP, this interview actually went very, very well, at least on their side. However, Phil did not make himself look any better in any light whatsoever. This, of course, led to very many moments where Phil would then later on berate them and say that it was a very unfair interview, when his initial reaction was that it was very fair, which we could all agree that it was. But as Phil is wont to do, he did get very mad that they made any amount of money specifically coming from him. However, he also, in his hypocritical fashion, stated that he was very happy that they made any money and that he was able to bring any traction to their channel. As Adam Krigler would say, talking out of both sides of your mouth, Phil. Later on, Phil would go to mention that he got goaded into an interview when realistically this entire situation was his idea to begin with. So it's just overall a very messy situation, but Phil has decided that he needs to be interviewed once again. I'm kind of convinced that every beginning of the year, Phil realizes he needs to do something to get the ball rolling as far as him getting talked about online. And I mean, for his opinion, what better way to do that than to stir up controversy and get people talking by getting an interview going. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the situation I'm talking about, Phil is actually the target of a new documentary by acclaimed YouTuber Mike Klum after his Boogie 2988 documentary, and he is actually planning on going into Phil's house. He's going to be going around town with Phil, as well as staying there for around a week or so. He will also be interviewing multiple people, including employees of WWE champions, as well as family members, friends, and former co-workers from the sounds of it. Of course, we don't know everybody who will be interviewed in this documentary. However, it's very interesting to say the least. I'm hoping, though, that it does not end up becoming some kind of puff piece for Phil, because Mike hasn't really said anything very critical of Phil. Now, this could also just be Mike playing the field and ultimately trying to stay in Phil's good graces so that he can actually get this documentary off the ground, which, to be fair, that is pretty ingenious if you think about it. I'm just hoping that it does turn out to be some masterstroke on Mike rather than a puff piece. Now, blasting past the interview saga, we have to also talk about the very sad state of affairs with Catherine Burnell. Catherine Burnell did show her face and her entire self on stream recently in one of Phil's surprise streams, and honestly everybody kind of believes that this is a calculated move, or at least I believe that this is a calculated move from Phil to be able to get her on camera and that he can be in control of people seeing her beforehand, because there is a very good chance she will be interviewed in the documentary. Now, the reason that this is notable, if you're not familiar, Catherine Burnell has not been seen on any of Phil's streams outside of the stream she did in 2018. So it's been nearly 6 years since we have seen any sign of Catherine Burnell. The only things we've seen of her have been a few minor pictures that have been leaked on the internet, but outside of that, nobody has seen her since that infamous interview she did 6 years ago. Now, if you're looking at pictures of Kat, you'll know that she is much bigger. Now, I want to be very clear, I'm not fat shaming, and I am not proposing that her being the size she is either a good or a bad thing. Personally, I'm a little bit of a larger person myself, so I'm not going to play it from the weight side of things. However, I am going to mention that the issue is less on that, and it has more to do with the amount of psychological control that Phil seems to have over her in terms of her discussion or mannerisms and the way she talks about things overall. It was noted as they were on stream together that Phil would consistently interrupt and cut her off, and rather than adding anything of note, he would consistently speak for her and almost preface all of her answers to questions, almost as if he was trying to give her the answers that she should be saying, rather than letting her speak for herself. Of course, if you ask Phil, he will deny this wholeheartedly. He believes that it was adding to the conversation and it being a social conversation flow or something to that nature. But essentially what it is, if you are looking and you know Phil well enough, you'll know that this is a sign of control, and ultimately it does not seem like a very healthy relationship. The way he would talk to her consistently felt like he was either talking to a child or as if he was talking to somebody who is much younger and much more inexperienced than he is. Going so far as to say things like, oh, if you put your legs on the ground and then you put them together, the cat will actually jump in your lap, almost as if she hasn't lived with the cat for nearly 5 years. Very strange behavior and very strange things coming from both of them, to say the least. Now, it is mentioned that Kat is going to be appearing in future streams. How much she will actually show up is yet to be determined, but we can only imagine, as Phil is wont to do, he is going to milk this situation for everything it's worth. Now, another notable topic is the fact that Phil has shot down dramatically in terms of his revenue this last year. I'm not 100% sure on numbers. I do know that Duty Streams, shout out to Duty Streams, does do audits on Phil and has kept a pretty close log of most of his finances for the last year. And from what I can determine, it sounds like Phil took a nearly 20% nosedive compared to previous years. So it does seem like his revenue, typically he makes around 100 to 150,000 per year. It does seem like this was about 20% less than that. It's quite notable that most of his streams have been significantly less as far as donations go, with probably the biggest stream actually being the one where Kat showed up, which received a lot of donations. However, most streams that he did this previous year were met with very middling to little success. Now, of course, Phil also decided to turn his KO gaming channel into a DSP throwbacks channel, and it has garnered some controversy for the fact that Phil has done essentially no editing whatsoever of any of his old content. It's still just as unbearable and just as difficult to watch as most of Phil's old streams, if not worse so. Constant racial remarks, constant inappropriate and immature humor cloud the entire video, and honestly, it's just not a very entertaining watch because of how bad he is at video games at large. I guess to summarize the rest of Phil's channel is not looking very good. Now, of course, I do believe Phil is going to find a way to persist because, let's be honest, Phil is the cockroach of the internet. He never dies. He never goes away. He is consistent. Just as death and taxes and the sun rising the next day, Phil will still be here on YouTube until the day he dies. But honestly, that's about as much of the new situations going on with Phil as there is to talk about. To be honest, it's been kind of a light year, or not a light year rather, but a light few months up until recently. And so yeah, my job is to basically make sure that you are informed on all of the current updates on Phil. So yeah, tell me what you think. What do you think Phil's new year will look like? Do you think the documentary will turn out good? How do you feel about Kat now that she's been shown on stream? I would love to know what you think. Overall, please feel free to comment below and let me know. As always, guys, if you like the content, please do consider subscribing and liking for more. I am working on trying to get more videos out consistently, as well as put out more live streams. So thank you so much for all of you who follow and watch. Once again, if there are any lolcows that you would like to see me cover, please do let me know below. Jupiter the Hybrid is one that I am keeping my eye on, so I would love to know if you'd like to see more content. Thanks, guys, so much. You all have a great day and stay safe out there.